Okay, we've never tried this before, but here we go. We're going to pretend like this is a normal classroom. Everything's fine. I'm just on your screen instead of standing in front of you. Um, we're kind of switching up the units. We're going to switch over to an area unit, which is going to be easier for y'all because y'all have already done this before. It's really just a review, and I'll talk about the assignment later at the end of the video. But for now, let's start with the area of a triangle. Some of you already know this formula. If you take the height of that triangle and you multiply it by the base and then divide it by 2, you will get the area for that triangle. The formula for that, area equals 1/2 base times height. And essentially, this is the altitude of the triangle, this height right here. So it forms a right angle. Sometimes that can be pretty obvious to see, especially when the triangle is standing up kind of at a right angle already. As you can see, the height would just be this leg instead of finding that altitude. You can also end up in a situation where you have to look outside the triangle to get the height. So in this case, the height you could find out here. Excuse me. The height you can find out here. So there's a couple different situations, but you guys have seen this before, and hopefully there'll be no confusion moving forward. Let's try a first example. So that's the area formula you need. So let's write that down straight off the bat. Area equals 1/2 base times height. You can also take the base times the height and then divide it by 2. And they're trying to trick you right here. As you can see, this says 5 inches and this says 1 foot. So what we're going to do is convert this to inches. 1 foot is 12 inches. Okay. And the hypotenuse is also labeled. We could call this 13 inches, but it's not so important because we won't need the hypotenuse to calculate this. If we call this the height, and I call this the base, it's really easy to just throw those numbers in there in that formula. 1/2 the base, which is 12, times the height, which is 5. Okay, I even have a calculator with me. Let's see if this works. Let's see. Here's how I do it. 12 times 5, 60, I guess, divided by 2. Area is going to be 30. Okay, and it's not going to be 30 inches. It's going to be 30 inches squared. Remember, that's the units for area, and that will be that problem complete. Okay, 30 inches squared. Pretty easy. You could have also switched the base and height, and it wouldn't have changed the problem at all. Let's see, example 2. This time we're dealing in units, where essentially this is 1 unit, because we're on a coordinate grid. So if we count up some dots here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is 6 units long. And we'll call that our base. Our base is going to be 6. And there are many different ways you could do this problem. You could use any part as the base, but using that flat edge as a base is probably the easiest. The height is actually going to be this section right here. This will be our height. Okay, it's on its side. Usually you don't think of height as a horizontal thing, but in this case, it's easier to look at it that way to get the area formula all together. See, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units for the height. Okay, and now we just use the same formula that we've been using. 1/2 base times height. 6 times 6 is 36. Okay, and then if you use a calculator, you'll find that half of 36 is what, 18? I'm gonna guess. I'm guessing because I accidentally closed the calculator. Whoops. Whoops. 36 divided by 2. 18. Perfect. This time I won't close it. 18. Okay, so that's triangles. Next thing we're going to move on to is parallelograms. Let's see, we're going to need the same 2 pieces of information for parallelograms. We need to know the length of the base and the height. Now, the thing about a parallelogram is you could call any one of those 4 sides a base if you wanted to. Usually we try to stick with the bottom, but sometimes the situation, maybe they only give you the left side and you have to use that in some kind of way. So you just have to be kind of flexible about what you call the base. In this case, let's just use the bottom for the base. So let's call that the base of the parallelogram. And to get the height, just like on the triangle, it's not going to be, this, oh goodness, boomer moment. Okay, it's not going to be exactly this area, this length right here. It's going to be this height right here that forms a right angle with the base. We could also use this part outside to call that the height. So we'll call that the height. You could also use this part. Essentially, we need those two parts to write the formula. And it's just like the area formula for a rectangle. So the area of a parallelogram is just base times height. It's just finding that base and height can be a little tricky because it's not a rectangle. It's not so obvious what is what. But very similar formula to the triangle, even easier actually. We just have to multiply two numbers. Let's use that formula down here for this parallelogram. There are a lot of things that are clearly marked, okay? And there are some things that are there to throw you off. For example, this 4.6 centimeters, that is there to trick you. That is not the height. The height that we're going to use is going to be that 3.5 centimeters. So I'll call that the height because it forms a right angle with this that I'm choosing as my base, which is 2 centimeters. Okay, just plug those two numbers in. 2 times 3.5, that's pretty quick. 2 times 3.5, 7. So the area equals, well, I'll just write it out. Okay, and remember our units here, they were centimeters. For area, it's going to be centimeters squared. Okay, so pretty easy example there. Let's do one more. Once again, feel free to pause the video at any point and review any concepts. All this information you'll find on the assignment, so this video will be useful to you. This is exactly what I was talking about. Sometimes it's not so obvious what's what. In fact, there's a lot of conflicting information here. For example, I would like to use the bottom as the base, but they gave me no information about that, so I can't. We can choose any of the four sides. The only side they gave me was this, so we have to use this as my base. So you could actually, draw this on a sheet of paper and rotate it so that it looks normal. But essentially what this means is we need a line that forms a right angle with the base. And you can see that that right angle right there is your clue. The segment that forms a right angle with the base is this 7 inches right here. So this will be my height. And we just use the formula we've been using. Area equals base times height, which is equal to 12 times 7, which 12 times 7 is equal to 84. Okay, remember your units, this will be inches squared, and that is the area of that parallelogram. And next, we will move on to trapezoids. Okay, so essentially, when you first think about a trapezoid, you might be thinking, okay, well, I could, split this into two triangles, find out the area of those two triangles, and then deal with that rectangle in the middle and then add it all together. Well, actually, there's a formula to give you the area of a trapezoid, just given a few pieces of information. So the only things that we need is, once again, the height, pretty important. The other thing that we need, actually, for this shape is the length of the two bases. So there are two bases, and you might be thinking, okay, which two of these lines are the bases? It's whichever ones are parallel. So these two are parallel with each other, top and bottom. Sometimes it can flip it on its side, but that's just to trick you. No matter what, those are my two bases. They're parallel, and we have to distinguish them. We could use two different letters, but since they're both bases, we use B1 and B2. It doesn't matter which one's which, because you'll see in the formula, we're just going to add them together to use them. The formula for a trapezoid, area is equal to 1/2 times the height times the bases added together. Okay, so essentially what you can do is add up the two bases, multiply it by the height, divide the whole thing by 2, and that will give you the area. This is a pretty important formula. It'll make this a lot faster. Yes, you could divide it up into 3 different shapes, but this formula will get you the answer much quicker than deconstructing the problem like that. So let's look at a few examples. Okay, I'm going to rewrite the formula real quick because I know this is a trapezoid. You can identify it from a parallelogram because you'll notice that these 2 sides here and here, they're not parallel. So we know it's not a parallelogram because remember, opposite sides have to be parallel for a parallelogram. Okay, those are my 2 bases. They're parallel. B1, let's call that B1. Let's call this B2. Okay, and then let's get a line for the height. Remember, we can't just use the diagonal lines here. We have to actually use the grid lines and this right angle that forms with the bottom to get the height itself. So this will be our height. And since we're dealing with a coordinate grid again, we just have to count some squares, essentially. Let's go ahead and take care of each individual part when we start here. Let's see, B1 is equal to, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. B1 is 7. B2, what I called B2, remember it doesn't matter, is 1, 2, 3 units long. Okay, and then finally my height, it's that red line I drew, that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units long. So we take all those numbers and plug them in to that formula. Okay, so you just find each letter, you're like, okay, those are the numbers I got, plug them into the formula, and you'll get a number out. This is a lot more of a calculator kind of job, but let's go ahead and plug them in and write them down. 1/2 times the height, which is 6, times B1 plus B2. Okay, we don't even need a calculator. 1/2 times 6 times 7 plus 3 is 10. 6 times 10 is 60, so this is 1/2 times 60, which is 30. Okay, and since we're dealing with a coordinate grid, we have to say units squared as my answer. Okay, the next one I found in the book, but it's actually pretty interesting. Have you ever noticed Nevada is a trapezoid? Okay, it doesn't look exactly like the trapezoids that we're used to. Usually we would see like another angle right here. Like usually we would see another angle that forms right there. But this is also a trapezoid, and I can tell because 2 of the sides are parallel. And because I know they're parallel, I can go ahead and label them with B1 and B2 right off the bat. Now this is an entire state, so of course the units are big, they're miles, but that's not going to change the problem that much. Okay, so the height is always going to be that distance, that perpendicular distance between the 2 bases. So my height will actually be 309 miles. Okay, let's go ahead and write down all that information. B1 is 511, B2 is 205, and my height is 309. Okay, so definitely going to need a calculator for this one with big numbers. Area is equal to, same formula from the last example, 1/2 the height times the bases added up. Okay, just so we don't have to type it in all at once, all we have to do is pull out the calculator again because I closed it again. Okay, let's see. 511 plus 205 is 716. So once again, I'm just making this a little bit easier to type in. 1/2 309 times 716. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the calculator is I'm going to take 309 times 716, divide the whole thing by 2 in that order. So let's see, clear everything. 309 times 716 is equal to that big number. Divide that by 2. We get 110,622. Let's see. That's equal to 110,000, I already forgot, 622. And since my original unit was miles, my answer is going to be in miles squared. So square miles, it's 110,622 square miles is the area of Nevada. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your assignment. Okay, that's all you need to complete your first quarantine assignment. Whoop. Let's see. These are the formulas you need. If you go to the description of this video, you'll find the link to the assignment itself. It's a quizzes or quizzes. I don't know how to say it. But it's just an online quiz. It has unlimited attempts. So if you get everything wrong, you could try it again. I'm being pretty lenient, of course, because we're in tough times right now. Um, but essentially, you can also go to, if you don't click on that link in the description, you can also go to joinmyquiz.com, all lowercase, and enter the code that's on the screen right now. You can also find the assignment on Canvas, where I will be posting this video along with the link to the quizzes itself. So go on there, take that quiz. And as far as assignment due dates, I'm leaving all the due dates for any assignments that I post. I'm leaving the due date as April 3rd for right now, as we see where we will go with this quarantine situation. But for right now, it'll just be open for you to take. And I suggest you complete it by Wednesday or by Thursday so that we can move on to something else online. Just so you know, any material that I cover online during this situation, if we are to go back to school, I won't be covering it again. So this is important for you to do. Um, if you have any questions about the quiz, ask me. You can message me on Canvas. That's much faster than email. I can respond really quickly. If you have any questions at all, let me know. Complete this assignment. Good luck, guys. Hope you enjoyed my virtual classroom. Subscribe and have a good day.